We'll start tonight in Proverbs 26 as we continue this catch-all series on Proverbs, and specifically how we can glean wisdom and discernment from the book of Proverbs that will help us. And so tonight we're going to talk about laziness, because the book of Proverbs has a lot to say about laziness, and kind of some vivid pictures for us to learn from as well from this topic. And so we'll follow the same pattern we did with drunkenness and alcohol last week. We'll look at the warnings against laziness and then the consequences of laziness. And then I'm going to throw in another little short topic as well. I chose this one tonight because I wanted it to be a little bit lighter. I feel like this is one that we work hard as a church, so this is maybe not one that's going to be the deepest conviction, but it should bring some conviction to us, and I hope it's one that is beneficial for the kids and the teens, just so we can see how important God says hard work is. So Proverbs 26, and we're going to start in verse 13, and we'll start with the warnings against laziness. And the first warning is that the lazy person thinks that they are wise. To finish that, they are not. All right, so they think they're wise when they are not. And so there's a warning here to be humble, not to think more highly than we should think about ourselves. So Proverbs 26, start with me in verse 13. The lazy man says, "There is a lion in the road. A fierce lion is in the streets. As a door turns on its hinges, so does the lazy man on his bed. The lazy man buries his hand in the bowl. It wearies him to bring it back to his mouth. The lazy man is wiser in his own eyes than 7 men who can answer sensibly." And so the lazy person here, they think they're wiser than they actually are. And we're given a couple, they seem a little bit out there, some of these examples of what a lazy man might say that he thinks or something he does that he thinks is wise or she thinks is wise but is not actually wise. The first is they give excuses, or they imagine or envision reasons not to work. I think that's what the author of Proverbs is getting at here. This proverb, the lazy man says, "There's a lion in the road." In other words, don't go out there. I can't go to work today. I don't know what's out there and could be waiting for me. It's dangerous out there. And so, it'd just be safer if I stay and work inside today and I don't go out to the field or out to the road. In fact, he calls it a fierce lion is in the streets. Right? It's dangerous out there. I can't work today. And they come up with reasons or excuses to avoid work. Maybe we've heard that before from people. Maybe we've done it ourselves sometimes. Even we have reasonable excuses sometimes that we think they're reasonable in our mind. I got a little something going on. I don't think I can work today, And you ever see those memes online of people, they plug their headphones in and make it look like they're on oxygen or something, tell their boss they can't come to work? We hopefully we don't do that, but we imagine ways to get out of work, to shirk work. I know I probably did that my fair share as a teenager or at different times, and I've certainly seen a lot of people do it as well. Verse 14 says, "As a door turns on its hinges, so does the lazy man on his bed." In other words, he's attached. Just like a door is attached to the frame, he's attached to his bed. And he just turns and turns and turns. Spends a lot of time in bed. Can't get up. Doesn't want to get up. In fact, there's this laziness in everyday issues. Verse 15, the lazy man buries his hand in the bowl. It wearies him to bring it back to his mouth. Now, I don't know if you've ever done so much work in a day that you've been so tired you haven't really even felt much like eating. I think that's different from the lazy man here. The lazy man is leaning over and they're just kind of scooping, barely moving their hand because they just don't have it in them. They don't have the strength to get moving. And then he brings it to the culmination here in verse 16. The lazy man is wiser in his own eyes than 7 men who can answer sensibly. I think the King James says 7 men who can render a reason. who can come up with a wise statement or a wise thought, he still feels himself wiser, smarter than they are. Here they are, these fools going off to work every day, working hard, and I just think we should work smarter, he says to himself. And all the while, he's not working hard at all. So the lazy person is foolish in the things that they do. They're warned that they're being foolish here. Go to Proverbs chapter 6. Proverbs 6. This is the first passage that I ever memorized of my own volition. And it wasn't even of my own volition. My pastor made me do it. But he made me memorize as an intern, so when I say my own volition, I didn't have to get a grade on it. But I still had to do it. And he made me memorize this entire section. Very first passage, Proverbs chapter 6, verse 6, all the way through verse 11. We're just going to go through the first 3 verses right now. Because the second warning against laziness is that even creation proclaims hard work. So we're warned that nature itself, God's creation, demonstrates hard work, and yet we as the chief of creation, the pinnacle of creation, mankind, should demonstrate that even better. And so we're warned not to be foolish, and we're warned to learn from nature. Verse 6, "Go to the ant, you sluggard. Consider her ways and be wise, which having no captain, overseer, or ruler, provides her supplies in the summer and gathers her food in the harvest." And so creation demonstrates the importance of hard work, and we're told here to consider the ant. Go to the ant, you sluggard, and consider the ant. Ponder, think about what the ant does, how it moves about. No one is telling it what to do. It's ingrained in its very chemistry, its very DNA. The instinctual things it's supposed to do is to work hard, to gather food, to prepare for the harvest, to do all those things. And we as a follower of God should examine those things, think about them, meditate on it, ponder it, and learn. I love the fact that creation demonstrates and teaches to us things that are valuable. That God created, not only in his creation did he make magnificent things, creatures, but he also ingrained in them this instinctual nature that causes them to demonstrate his goodness in the things they do. Even an ant. A tiny, tiny ant. No ruler, no overseer, no boss, and yet it works diligently. In fact, it works till it dies, and usually after it dies, when its fellow ants carries it back for food. I think our illustration, dies there with it. But we should consider the ant. We should ponder the ant. It's interesting in God's creation. Fun fact, totally irrelevant to the message. But there's a lot of termites in Africa, and we ate a few termites while we were over there. They eat them. They fry them up. Tastes like popcorn, kind of. Burnt popcorn, that is. But there are so many, there's not ants, but termites. There are so many termites in the world. If you put all the human people, humankind, and you weighed mankind, how much mankind weighs collectively in the world. So 8 billion people right now in the world. You weighed everyone. Termites would outweigh humans by 8 times. That's how many termites there are in this world. And yet, God knows everyone. And God created them, and he orchestrates them so they move about. Then shouldn't we, as image bearers of Christ, image bearers of God, shouldn't we demonstrate what hard work looks like as well? And so there's this command to the sluggard, the lazy man. Go to the ant, examine the ant, consider her ways, and you will become wiser. No captain, no overseer, no ruler, and yet she gathers. She provides and gathers. Works hard and gathers for the future. And so we have this warning or this command to consider God's creation and learn from it. And the reason is the consequences. So let's look at the consequences. I just have 2 consequences here because there can be more, but I think they're very important for us to distinguish. The first is it brings poverty, which is not a shock. Verse 9 of the same passage says, "How long will you slumber, O sluggard? When will you rise from your sleep? A little slumber, or a little sleep, a little slumber, a little folding of the hands to sleep, so shall your poverty come on you like a prowler, and your need like an armed man." And so this is really, this verse 10 is a quote of what they might say. Right? The author here asks, how long will you continue to roll around on your bed like a door on its hinges? How long will you love your slumber and love your sleep? And what's the answer in verse 10? Just a little more. A little more sleep. A little bit of slumber. A little more. A little folding of the hands to sleep. That's the response. Just a little more. Always a little more. And what's the result? The consequence. So shall your poverty come as one like a prowler, and your want, or your need, like an armed man. And so the lazy person won't get out of bed. They just want a little more comfort, a little more rest, a little more relaxation, and soon their poverty startles them. That's the idea of an armed man coming in. A prowler has approached. The prowler doesn't knock on the door and say, "Hey, I just want you to know I'm out here. Go ahead and fall asleep. And when you fall asleep, I'm going to come in, take a few of your things. Don't worry, I won't harm you." The prowler doesn't announce that they're coming. It's sudden. It's alarming. It catches them off guard. And that's what happens with the sluggard or the lazy man. All of a sudden, they're caught off guard by their poverty. All of a sudden, they don't have enough money. They don't have enough to make ends meet. Do they go work? No. They look for easy help, easy money. And the second half says your need is like an armed man. Their need overtakes them, overpowers them, seizes control, and there's nothing they can do about it. That's what laziness does. It brings poverty. It brings a lot of trouble besides just poverty, but it brings, fails to give God glory, but it brings difficulty to one's life. It's inviting it. All the while, slowly, people lull themselves into a stupor of self-denial. Well, the second, I've got a couple more verses I'd like to turn to. Proverbs, actually, I think I have them up on the screen. Proverbs 18, verse 9 says, "He who is slothful in his work is a brother to him who is a great destroyer." Second consequence to laziness is that it wastes one's life. And I think this one is equally as bad as poverty. Poverty is bad in that poverty has other consequences to it, right? A lack of food, or a lack of power, or a lack of energy to heat your home. There's safety issues in there. But laziness also takes what you have and you could use to the honor and the glory of God, and it wastes it. It squanders it. He who is slothful in his work is a brother or kin or related to him who is a great destroyer. The term great destroyer here is to decay or waste or bring to ruin. So the idea is the lazy man takes what he has and squanders and wastes it for something that's unprofitable to the point where he doesn't have it anymore. And by the way, there's a lot of passages in the book of Proverbs that talks about a son who is disobedient and rebellious, and he's squandering his parents. He's wasting their life and their livelihood, and he's called a fool for it, and we're going to look at those passages in an upcoming topic. But this man, this young man is the idea. He lives at home and he takes from his parents, and he's a drain upon his father, and he's disrespectful, and he's disobedient to his mother, and he's hurtful to her, and all the while he's just wasting and squandering their life and their time and their effort. And the Bible condemns this man. That's the same idea. Here they're a destroyer. They take what they have and it decays and wastes and ruins. Since I've talked a lot about Africa, I'll talk about it one more time. Africa, laziness is built into the culture. Thievery is built into the culture. I'm not trying to speak poorly of the people. They're wonderful people, but there's these cultural pitfalls. By the way, we have them as Americans too. We have cultural pitfalls that are our own. Things about the culture that are sinful and wrong that should be done away with. And one is thievery, because they feel like if you have and I take from you, it's not really stealing because you should have given it to me anyway, so that we're all equity. That's what they believe that. The other component is laziness. So they build their huts, mud hut, and they take brick and they sun dry the brick, or maybe they purchase them and they build their mud hut, a rondavel, and they put a grass roof on it, and they do nothing with it. No maintenance whatsoever. Ever. And then as soon as it becomes ruinous or too difficult to live in, they just build a new one. There's no maintenance on it, and they feel like it's easier to just take a week once every 7 or 8 years and build a new one than it is to maintain what they already have. And what a hard concept it was to first understand what they're doing and why, and then try to help them understand that maintenance is a good thing. Hard work is a good thing. And hard work is rewarded. And yet here the slothful man, he is a companion, a brother to the man who is a destroyer or wasteful. Proverbs 21:25 says, "The desire of the slothful killeth him, for his hands refuse to labor." And so laziness kills. It kills our desire to live a valuable life. It kills our desire and our ability to be profitable for the Lord, because we seek our own pleasure, our own comforts. A refusal to work should result in consequence, and Scripture tells us it does. You probably could quote 2 Thessalonians 3, verse 10. "If anyone will not work, neither shall he eat." Right? The Bible is full of passages that encourage us to work hard and to be diligent. And so I think it's a good reminder just to look at these things that Proverbs says and examine them and examine our own hearts and our own life and ask, are we working hard? Are we using what God has given to advance His kingdom, or are we using what He's given us and blessed us with for our own comforts and our own desires and our own profit? I want to talk about another. I got 2 short ones today, so I kind of tricked you. The other is pretense or pretenders. And the Bible talks about this just a little bit in the book of Proverbs, but I think it's valuable because I think it corresponds to a degree with hard work and labor. And the idea is just to not pretend to be someone or something that we are not. Proverbs 13, verse 7 says, "There is one who makes himself rich, yet has nothing, and one who makes himself poor, yet has great riches." There's one who makes himself rich, yet has nothing. I think this one's really relevant to our society right now in America. Pastor Perry and I have talked about this. He had a brother who helped do something in new homes, evaluate new homes. And these would be homes that someone would have lived in for a year or 2. Oh, this is what it was. It was removing furniture. You know, like, is it Aaron's Furniture? You can rent furniture, you know. And he would go to pick up rentals, only he did it in a really nice part of Nashville. And he said it was a really hard thing for him to get to learn. He would go to $1 million homes to repossess furniture or to pick up furniture. And he would enter the homes, and the homes would be bare. on the inside because they're house poor, right? We got a term for that, house poor. They bought the house and they had the cars for the look, but inside they were broke. They were empty. We have a whole society that is doing this, and this is why I think it's important. I really wanted to talk about it today. To behave like someone that we are not is wrong. We call it hypocrisy. We talked about that last week. To behave or to act in a hypocritical way, to live a hypocritical life. And here the poor man acts as if he is rich. He refuses to be honest, and he tries to put on this air. And the poor man, or the rich man here in this case, has great riches, yet he makes himself poor. And he stands in contrast to the fool who acts rich when he is not. The reason I think this is important is because of, I'm going to just say it, social media. Social media is the easiest way to act like somebody that we're not. And here's why I bring this up. I bring this up for the teens and the kids especially. And some of you golden seasoned saints. Listen, I mean this honestly. See, our seasoned saints, I think, have a problem. And I mean this in a very generalization. You grew up listening to Walter Cronkite. Okay? You grew up listening to someone you could trust. And when you read the news or heard the news or listened to the news, you could trust the news for the most part. And you can't do that anymore. This is why I want to tell it to the young people too. Do you realize there are Hollywood sets that if you're an influencer, you can fly out to Hollywood and you can rent a set to take pictures and record videos like in billion-dollar mansions, or maybe not billion, million-dollar mansions and million-dollar expensive luxury jets that are just a facade. They're just a framework, and from one angle it looks lavish, but it's really open, and there's cameras and lights and all things going on. And our society has absolutely built this structure of pretending to be somebody that they're not. And here's why I think it's important. I watch videos with my kids, and I've got 2 kids that linger. I've got 2 older ones who don't linger. They go off by themselves. But I got 2 who linger, and if I'm on my phone, they are there, hovering, literally hovering on the back of the couch, watching. And we have conversations sometimes where, as I'm flipping through YouTube, it's the only social media I have, but I flip through YouTube a little bit, and there I will see a video, right? See a prank video of somebody pulling a prank on someone else. And I have to ask my kids, is that real or fake? And they usually don't get it right. And I have to ask them, why is somebody recording this? If this is a fake, if this is real, why is there a camera zooming in right now on this surprise prank that's going on? We have to build discernment as believers, and we need to do it with our kids because this world is getting faker and faker. I know that's not good English. And we have to help them develop discernment because they're living in it. But God here doesn't reward the person who claims to be someone that they are not, who expresses themselves to be rich when they have nothing. It's deceptive. And God doesn't reward that kind of deception. And so we see it's deceptive in character, and it's also deceptive in value. Proverbs 14, verse 8. The wisdom of the prudent is to understand his way, but the folly of fools is deceit. The foolishness of fools is to deceive and think they can get away with it. And yet here the wise are prudent. They're careful and they understand the ways. The wise are content to live with the life that God has given them, or to earn, to work hard. And this is why I think they go hand in hand. To work hard, to bring value and character to the world around them. And yet the simple, the fool here, the hypocrite, is content to play in foolishness. to deceive others or try to deceive others to gain influence, to gain power, to gain prestige. I mean, there's this whole kind of scandal going on in Twitter right now that half the Twitter followers are fake. They're bots. They're just computers that have made up people who are following so-called influencers. I mean, most of what's happening on here is fake. It's not real. And we need to be wise to discern what is of good character and what is not. And lastly, the pretenders, they love the frivolous things. And yet the frivolous things bring poverty. Proverbs 28, verse 19. He who tills his land will have plenty of bread, but he who follows frivolity will have poverty enough. Hard work produces value. Hard work produces bread here, or plenty of bread. Yet the fool pursues worthless, valueless things, and it leads to emptiness or poverty. And so let's set our mind on things that are helpful, that are honest, that are pure, as we talked about this morning, and just and lovely, and are of a good report. We are to think on the things that Christ tells us to think on. And we are to behave with the character that Christ is trying to instill in us when we walk with Him. I think our young people need this. So yes, I get it. We're in a church filled with hardworking people. And probably your bank accounts and your homes evidence that. But are we instilling this in our kids? There's a great problem today. I love living in Hamilton County. Well, I don't live in Hamilton County, but I pretty much live in Hamilton County. We operate in Hamilton County. I love this area. But part of me wishes my kids didn't get to see so much good stuff all the time. Right? Richest county in the state. I've heard varying statistics concerning the country per capita. If you take just income alone, it's the richest. But you know what that means? They're not seeing some of the struggles and the poverty or difficulties that are going on in the other parts of the world. And life's coming easy to them, in a sense. And I want them to see what hard work gets, but I don't want them to feel like they deserve it. Right? We have to work hard. And we have to work hard with honesty to be who Christ wants us to be, to demonstrate that to the world. And so let me encourage you to continue with your children, with your teens, to continue to instill hard work in them, to challenge them, to press them forward, but to do it for the cause of Christ so that He's honored and He's glorified. All right, let's pray, and then we're going to sing a song, and we'll have our business meeting.